The military courtroom fell silent as the judge leaned forward with unmistakable contempt. His eyes narrowed at the composed single mother standing before him, a decorated Navy SEAL being humiliated for supposed misconduct. The gallery of junior officers smirked, believing this would be another swift conviction. When the judge mockingly asked for her call sign, expecting something trivial, she answered in a whisper that changed everything. Within seconds, high-ranking officers stood at attention. Classified files appeared on screens, and the judge's face drained of color as he realized his grave mistake. The system that sought to destroy her had just destroyed itself. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you value stories of hidden courage and justice served, consider subscribing to support more untold stories like this one. The Pentagon War Room hummed with tension, bathed in the blue glow of digital screens. Satellite footage showed a compound in an undisclosed location where 15 hostages, including American diplomats, were being held by extremists. The Joint Chiefs stared at the imagery, faces grim. "Extraction impossible," General Hayes muttered. "We've run every scenario." A female voice spoke from the shadows. "I can get them all out." The room fell silent as heads turned. The woman's face remained obscured in the dimly lit corner. The Secretary of Defense exchanged glances with Hayes. "You're sure?" "Yes, sir." A senior official leaned toward Hayes, whispering just loud enough for others to hear. "Send in Night Fox." The name hung in the air like a spell. Nods of agreement rippled through the room. The woman disappeared without another word. 7 years later, former Lieutenant Commander Larissa Thorne walked her daughter Wren to school through the crisp autumn air of Naval Station Norfolk. At 39, Larissa moved with quiet purpose, her athletic build concealed beneath a simple civilian jacket. A distinctive scar traced her jawline, the only visible mark of her former life. "So foxes have special adaptations for hunting at night," Wren explained, clutching her science project notes. "Their eyes reflect light differently, and they can hear a mouse moving under snow from yards away." Larissa smiled. "Nature's perfect predator." "That's why I picked them for my project," Wren said, her 12-year-old enthusiasm infectious. "Everyone else is doing wolves or eagles." "Always good to look where others don't," Larissa replied, tucking a strand of Wren's hair behind her ear. The morning sun caught the silver fox pendant hanging from Wren's necklace, a gift from her last birthday. As they approached the school gates, Larissa knelt to her daughter's level. "Remember, I might be late picking you up today. I have that meeting." Wren's expression grew serious beyond her years. "The military thing? Will it be okay?" Larissa maintained her composure. "It will be fine, just paperwork. Nothing for you to worry about." Wren hugged her fiercely. "Dad always said you were the strongest person he ever knew." Something flickered behind Larissa's eyes, then disappeared. "Your father had a gift for exaggeration." After watching Wren disappear into the school building, Larissa's posture changed subtly as she turned toward the JAG headquarters in the distance. Her stride lengthened, her shoulders squared, her expression became unreadable, a transformation so slight only a trained observer would notice. The imposing military courthouse loomed ahead, its American flag snapping in the breeze. Larissa climbed the steps alone, no lawyer, no entourage. Junior officers clustered near the entrance fell silent as she approached, their whispers following her like shadows. "That's her, the one discharged for insubordination. I heard she endangered an entire team. Thinks she's above protocol. Single mom now, right? Husband was KIA a few years back." Larissa moved past them, her face betraying nothing. Inside, she navigated the marble corridors with practiced ease, as if she had mapped every possible entrance and exit, a habit from another life. The courtroom doors opened to a gallery already filling with naval officers and selected press. Rear Admiral Elliot Blackwood, presiding judge, reviewed her file at the bench, his contempt barely concealed. At 62, Blackwood had built his reputation on military discipline and by-the-book operations. His thinning gray hair and wire-frame glasses gave him a professorial appearance, belied by the hardness in his eyes. The defense table stood empty, except for Larissa. Across the aisle, Commander Nash Westfield, lead prosecutor, conferred with his team of JAG lawyers. At 45, Westfield projected ambition in every gesture, his career path clearly aimed toward the stars on Blackwood's shoulders. As the proceedings began, Blackwood gavelled the room to order. This tribunal will now come to order. Case number 47-228, United States Navy versus Lieutenant Commander Larissa Thorne. The room settled into expectant silence. Lieutenant Commander Thorne, you stand accused of violating direct orders during Operation Sandpiper, endangering fellow service members, and compromising national security. How do you plead? Larissa stood, her voice steady. Not guilty, sir. Blackwood regarded her over his glasses. Let the record show the defendant has refused counsel, insisting on representing herself despite lacking any legal background. He addressed the gallery directly, his tone performative. The arrogance seems to be a consistent theme in your service record, Lieutenant Commander. A ripple of knowing chuckles spread through the courtroom. In the back row, a distinguished man in civilian clothes watched intently. Admiral Raymond Cahill, 65, former director of Naval Special Warfare Command, had chosen to sit apart from the other senior officers, his presence unexpected and unremarked. Near the press section, investigative, journalist Ellis Zane, 34, made notes on a small pad, his keen eyes missing nothing. Unlike the other reporters, he showed no amusement at the judge's remarks. Westfield rose for his opening statement, moving with theatrical precision. The prosecution will demonstrate that Lieutenant Commander Thorne has repeatedly disregarded chain of command, placed her judgment above established protocols, and in the case of Operation Sandpiper, directly endangered American lives through her insubordination. The evidence will show a pattern of reckless behavior, justified by results that, upon closer examination, appear greatly exaggerated. He proceeded to present carefully edited mission reports displayed on the courtroom screens, sections heavily redacted, others highlighted to portray Larissa as impulsive and uncontrollable. On April 12, 2022, Lieutenant Commander Thorne abandoned her assigned position during a critical phase of Operation Sandpiper. This unauthorized deviation resulted in a 43-minute communications blackout that nearly compromised the entire mission. When questioned, she claimed to have received intelligence about civilian presence not verified by command. This excuse has become her standard justification for disregarding direct orders. Throughout Westfield's presentation, Larissa remained still, her eyes occasionally moving to Admiral Cahill, whose expression remained unreadable. As the morning session neared its conclusion, Larissa slid a sealed envelope across the table to Blackwood. "What's this?" he asked, eyebrow raised. "My request for specific classified files to be admitted into evidence, sir." Blackwood skimmed the document, his face darkening. "Request denied. These operations don't exist in any official capacity." With deliberate contempt, he tore the paper in half. In the gallery, Cahill made brief eye contact with someone near the doors, giving a slight nod. The morning recess was called. As people filed out, Ellis Zane lingered, watching Larissa gather her minimal notes. She felt his gaze and looked up, their eyes meeting briefly before she turned away. The afternoon session began with Lieutenant Xavier Drake taking the stand. At 33, Drake carried himself with the confidence of an officer on the rise, his testimony clearly rehearsed. Lieutenant Commander Thorne was under strict orders to maintain her position, securing our communication hub. Instead, she abandoned her post for approximately 40 minutes. Upon return, she claimed to have secured the perimeter based on intelligence she received directly, circumventing normal channels. Westfield circled the witness stand. "And did you find evidence of this alleged threat she neutralized?" "No, sir. Subsequent sweeps found no evidence supporting her claim. The area was clear as initially reported." "And what was the impact of her unauthorized absence?" "The operation was delayed, potentially alerting the target, and team communication was compromised during a critical phase." Throughout Drake's testimony, Larissa made no notes, asked no questions. Her silence visibly frustrated Blackwood, who seemed eager for confrontation. "Lieutenant Commander Thorne, do you wish to cross-examine the witness?" "No, sir." Blackwood's jaw tightened. "Very well. This court will recess for lunch. We'll resume at 1400 hours. In the courthouse hallway, Ellis Zane approached Larissa as she stood alone near a window, looking out at the naval base beyond. "You know they're setting you up, right?" Ellis said quietly. "I've covered enough of these to recognize a railroad job." Larissa studied him, her expression neutral. "Then you know not to believe everything presented as evidence." "I've been digging into this case for weeks," Ellis continued, keeping his voice low. "I found inconsistencies in Drake's deployment records. He wasn't even in country when he claims you abandoned your post." A flicker of interest crossed her face. "Why help me?" "My brother was a Marine, Fallujah, 2007. Ellis watched her closely. "He told me once that a shadow pulled them out when they were trapped behind enemy lines. A shadow that moved like a fox." Larissa's expression revealed nothing, but her eyes sharpened. "Your brother has an active imagination. 7 Marines extracted against impossible odds by an operator working alone? That's not imagination. That's a miracle." "Sounds like a good story," she replied. "Not all good stories are true." Ellis handed her his card. "Not all true stories get told either." When the afternoon session convened, Blackwood's demeanor had grown increasingly hostile, his patience visibly thinning with Larissa's composed silence. "Perhaps your supposed exemplary service was merely administrative after all," he remarked during questioning about her deployment history. "Your file contains recommendations from senior officers, yet the specifics of your achievements remain suspiciously vague." The gallery watched the exchange with interest, many enjoying the spectacle of the stoic woman being publicly dressed down. "Lieutenant Commander Thorne, you've been reprimanded multiple times for exceeding authority. What makes you believe standard protocols don't apply to you?" Larissa remained measured in her response. "I've always prioritized mission objectives and personnel safety, sir." "Convenient that these priorities repeatedly aligned with disregarding direct orders," Blackwood countered. The questioning continued for another hour, growing increasingly pointed. Westfield introduced redacted mission reports, implying Larissa had endangered lives through unauthorized actions, while offering no context for her decisions. As the tension in the courtroom built, the unexpected happened. The doors opened, and Commander Octavia Reeves entered with purposeful strides. At 42, Reeves carried herself with the unmistakable bearing of naval intelligence, her uniform impeccable, a folder clutched in her hand. She approached the bench, presenting credentials that caused Blackwood's eyebrows to rise. "This proceeding is closed to outside personnel, Commander," Blackwood said, irritation evident. "Sir, I'm here by directive of the Secretary of the Navy," Reeves replied, her voice professional but firm. They spoke in hushed tones, their conversation inaudible to the gallery. Blackwood's face progressively reddened, his expression shifting from irritation to something resembling concern. Abruptly, he straightened. "This court is adjourned until 0900 tomorrow." His gavel struck with unusual force. "All parties will be prepared to resume at that time." As the courtroom emptied, Admiral Cahill observed the exchange between Blackwood and Reeves, his eyes narrowing slightly. Ellis Zane made hurried notes, sensing a shift in the proceedings' trajectory. That evening, Larissa returned to her modest home on the naval base, immediately noticing the almost imperceptible signs of intrusion. Nothing obvious was missing, but items were slightly out of place. A picture frame angled differently, a kitchen drawer not fully closed. She moved methodically through the house, checking each room before retrieving Wren from the neighbor who had picked her up from school. Only after her daughter was safely asleep did Larissa remove a floorboard beneath her bed, revealing a hidden compartment. It was empty except for a small carved fox figurine, its presence seemingly a message in itself. Her phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. "Phoenix protocol activated. Watch your 6." She deleted the message immediately, her expression unchanged, but her posture subtly alert, like a predator sensing a shift in the wind. The second day of the hearing brought noticeable changes. The gallery had expanded to include more senior officers, including 2 representatives from the Joint Chiefs. Additional security had been posted at the doors, and the atmosphere had shifted from routine disciplinary proceeding to something weightier. Blackwood appeared rattled but determined, his earlier confidence tempered by whatever Commander Reeves had shared. Westfield consulted urgently with his team, clearly adapting strategy mid-course. The first witness called was Captain Elias Thorne, 42, no relation to Larissa despite the shared surname. He commanded her SEAL team for 3 deployments and entered the courtroom with measured steps. His testimony clearly one Westfield had counted on. "Captain Thorne, how would you characterize Lieutenant Commander Thorne's compliance with the chain of command during your time as her commanding officer?" Elias considered his words carefully. "She interpreted orders through the lens of mission success." Blackwood interrupted, That's a diplomatic way of saying she disregarded orders when convenient, isn't it, Captain? Elias stiffened, his response measured but firm. No, sir. That's a precise way of saying she prioritized mission objectives and personnel safety above bureaucratic constraints when circumstances required adaptation. Westfield tried to redirect. So, she was insubordinate? She was effective, Elias replied, looking directly at Larissa. Something unspoken passed between them, a shared understanding built on experiences the courtroom would never know. The exchange continued, growing increasingly tense as Elias refused to characterize Larissa's actions as reckless, despite Westfield's persistent framing. During cross-examination, Larissa asked only one question. Captain Thorne, in your professional assessment, did my actions during our deployments ever unnecessarily endanger personnel or compromise mission objectives? Never, he answered without hesitation. Your judgment under extreme pressure was exceptional. As Captain Thorne was dismissed, Commander Reeves approached the bench again, conferring briefly with Blackwood. His expression soured, but he nodded reluctantly. The court will now review certain operational details relevant to these proceedings, Blackwood announced. Some of this information remains classified, despite limited declassification authorized specifically for this hearing. Reeves presented documentation showing discrepancies between the official mission reports of Operation Sandpiper and the actual intelligence available at the time. The target location contained 23 civilians, including 11 children, Reeves stated, information deliberately omitted from Lieutenant Commander Thorne's briefing. Murmurs spread through the gallery. Cahill watched Blackwood carefully, while Ellis Zane scribbled notes rapidly. Blackwood attempted to minimize the revelation. These alleged omissions, if they occurred, weren't necessarily intentional. Battlefield intelligence is often imperfect. Reeves continued, unperturbed. Intelligence assets confirmed civilian presence 3 hours before the strike order. That information was suppressed at command level. Westfield rose quickly, redirecting attention. Commander Reeves, nothing you've presented excuses Lieutenant Commander Thorne's subsequent actions, abandoning her team, violating communications protocols, and compromising the entire operation. That characterization contradicts secure mission logs, Reeves countered. Logs that conveniently support the defendant's version of events? Westfield's skepticism was performative now, playing to the gallery rather than seeking truth. The tension escalated as competing narratives emerged. What had begun as a straightforward disciplinary hearing was revealing layers of institutional conflict, with Larissa caught in the center. As the day's proceedings neared conclusion, Blackwood focused his attention directly on Larissa, his earlier confidence partially restored. Regardless of mission details, you've demonstrated a pattern of disregarding authority when it suits you. This isn't an isolated incident, is it? My record speaks for itself, Larissa replied evenly. Indeed it does, a record of numerous reprimands, redacted missions, and questionable achievements. Blackwood leaned forward. Perhaps you can enlighten us. What exactly makes you so special that normal rules don't apply? The courtroom fell silent, awaiting her response. For the first time, a hint of emotion crossed Larissa's face, quickly controlled. I've served my country to the best of my abilities under often difficult circumstances, she said finally. That's all any service member can do. Blackwood studied her, seemingly disappointed by her measured response. This court is adjourned until tomorrow, when Lieutenant Commander Thorne will take the stand. I expect full and transparent testimony, particularly regarding Operation Sandpiper. That night, in a sensitive compartmented information facility deep within Naval Intelligence Headquarters, Admiral Cahill met with Commander Reeves, their conversation occurring in a room swept for listening devices. How much has been compromised? Cahill asked, reviewing files spread across the table. Too much. If Thorne testifies fully tomorrow, the entire program is exposed, Reeves replied. And if she doesn't? She goes down for following the rules of engagement while Blackwood's faction walks away clean. Cahill studied operational photos pinned to a secure board, shadowy figures extracting hostages from impossible situations. She deserves better than this. Sir, if we reveal Night Fox's identity, the ripple effects could compromise ongoing operations and operators. I know the risks, Cahill said heavily. Send the authorization request, all the way up. Reeves hesitated. You're sure? Larissa Thorne saved more American lives than anyone will ever know, Cahill said. I won't let her be sacrificed to protect bureaucrats who issued illegal orders. As dawn broke on the third day, Larissa received another text message, authorized, Phoenix complete. She deleted it, then prepared for the day with methodical calm, selecting a simple dark blue suit that emphasized her military bearing without flaunting it. She helped Ren prepare for school, maintaining their normal routine despite the weight of the day ahead. Will it be over today? Ren asked as Larissa braided her hair. I hope so, Larissa answered honestly. Are you in trouble? The kids at school are talking. Larissa turned her daughter gently to face her. People will always talk. What matters is what's true, not what's said. Ren nodded, wise beyond her years. Like the fox, right? Silent, but always watching. Larissa smiled. Just like that. The courtroom was packed when Larissa arrived. Additional security had been posted at every entrance. Several intelligence officials and Joint Chiefs representatives had joined the gallery overnight. The air crackled with anticipation. Blackwood called the session to order, his demeanor suggesting he intended to conclude matters decisively. Lieutenant Commander Thorne will now take the stand. As Larissa was sworn in, Westfield whispered to his assistant with unearned confidence, "She'll break. They always do." What no one noticed was Admiral Cahill discreetly passing a note to Larissa as she approached the witness stand. She unfolded it briefly, reading 4 simple words. Tell them who you are. The courtroom held its collective breath as the questioning began, unaware that everything was about to change. If you've ever witnessed someone finally receiving the recognition they deserved after years of silent service, share your thoughts below. Sometimes the most extraordinary heroes walk among us unnoticed, their greatest acts known only to a few. What silent hero deserves acknowledgement in your life? Blackwood leaned forward on the bench, his initial posture of contempt now mixed with something more complex. Tension had been building in the courtroom since Larissa took the stand, a pressure that seemed to affect everyone except the woman herself. Lieutenant Commander Thorne, Blackwood began, explain your actions during Operation Sandpiper. Larissa's voice remained steady, her military bearing intact. I received intelligence that the target location contained civilians not disclosed in our briefing. This intelligence came through a trusted asset in the region. An asset outside standard communication channels, Blackwood interjected. An asset whose information had proven reliable in previous operations, Larissa corrected. The intelligence indicated 23 civilians present, including 11 children. And you unilaterally decided this unverified intelligence outweighed your direct orders from command? I determined the strike would violate rules of engagement and potentially constitute a war crime if executed as ordered. The gallery stirred uncomfortably. Several senior officers exchanged glances, the weight of her accusation settling over the room. Westfield rose immediately. Your Honor, the defendant is making serious allegations without evidence. Blackwood nodded. Commander Reeves has presented certain documentation regarding civilian presence, but nothing confirming Lieutenant Commander Thorne had this information during the operation. My communication logs were submitted with my after-action report, Larissa stated calmly. Those logs disappeared from the official record. In the gallery, Ellis Zane watched intently, his journalistic instincts recognizing the layers beneath this exchange. This wasn't merely about a disciplinary action. Something larger was unfolding, institutional forces colliding with individual integrity. Blackwood's frustration grew visible. Your entire career seems characterized by these convenient explanations for disregarding protocols. Your file contains numerous instances where you operated beyond parameters. Parameters sometimes conflict with mission objectives and personnel safety, Larissa replied. So, you believe you know better than your commanding officers? Blackwood's voice rose slightly. I believe in completing the mission with minimal casualties, sir. The morning continued with this pattern, Blackwood's questions growing increasingly pointed, Larissa's responses remaining measured but unwavering. The gallery watched the exchange like a high-stakes match, momentum shifting subtly with each exchange. As the session progressed, Blackwood's demeanor shifted from professional disapproval to something more personal, his questions designed less to extract information than to provoke reaction. Your file contains more redactions than actual text, he remarked with unveiled contempt. Convenient for hiding failures, isn't it? Those redactions exist for reasons beyond my control, sir. Or perhaps to maintain the mythology that's developed around your service record, Blackwood pressed. You've cultivated quite the reputation among certain circles, haven't you? Larissa remained silent, refusing the bait. In the back row, Admiral Cahill watched with growing concern, occasionally making notes. Beside him, Commander Reeves maintained a professional demeanor despite the increasingly hostile tone of the proceedings. During the mid-morning recess, Ellis approached Captain Elias Thorne as he stood alone near a window. "You're walking a fine line in there," Ellis observed quietly. Elias studied the journalist with military assessment. "There are lines that shouldn't be crossed, even in testimony. What really happened during Sandpiper?" Elias glanced around before speaking in lowered tones. "Ask yourself why a routine disciplinary hearing has drawn the attention of 2 admirals and naval intelligence." Ellis followed his gaze to where Commander Reeves conferred with security personnel. "This isn't about insubordination, is it?" "In my experience," Elias replied carefully, "when multiple high-level officers appear at a proceeding meant for a lieutenant commander, something significant is at stake. Something worth destroying a decorated officer's reputation to protect?" Elias didn't answer directly. "Lieutenant Commander Thorne once extracted my team from a situation our intel said was unsurvivable. She came alone, against orders, because she had information our command structure had either missed or ignored. Why hasn't she said this in her testimony? Perhaps because some missions officially never happened." Elias straightened his uniform. "Or perhaps because she's protecting something more important than her own career." When the court reconvened, the atmosphere had subtly changed. The gallery had grown, word apparently spreading through the naval base about the proceedings. Additional security officers now stood at each entrance, their presence suggesting higher stakes than a simple disciplinary hearing. Blackwood's questioning took a more aggressive turn. "Lieutenant Commander Thorne, let's address your history of unauthorized operations directly. In March 2019, you disappeared from your forward operating base for 36 hours. Upon return, you claimed to have pursued intelligence regarding enemy movements. No such intelligence was logged in official records. The intelligence came through local assets developed during previous deployments," Larissa explained. "Assets not officially recognized or authorized," Blackwood noted pointedly. "Assets that provided accurate information that prevented an ambush of our patrol, saving 17 lives." "So you claim. Convenient that these miraculous interventions always occur when you're operating alone, without witnesses." Larissa's expression remained controlled, but something flickered in her eyes, a momentary reaction quickly suppressed. Admiral Cahill leaned forward slightly, catching the subtle tell that most would miss. In the brief silence that followed Blackwood's accusation, Cahill made a decision, nodding almost imperceptibly to Commander Reeves. Reeves stood immediately. "Your Honor, I've been authorized to present additional operational details relevant to these proceedings." Westfield objected immediately. "This is highly irregular, Your Honor. Commander Reeves has already introduced selective evidence without proper context." Blackwood considered, clearly caught between competing imperatives. "The court will hear the commander." Reeves approached, presenting a tablet with secured documentation. "This information has been declassified by direct order as of Oro 600 this morning." The courtroom screens activated, displaying mission reports with fewer redactions than previously shown. The documents revealed discrepancies between the official record of Operation Sandpiper and intelligence reports filed by field assets. "These reports confirm Lieutenant Commander Thorne received verifiable intelligence regarding civilian presence at the target location," Reeves stated. "This intelligence was confirmed by multiple sources, but was not included in her mission briefing." Murmurs spread through the gallery. Ellis Zane scribbled notes rapidly, connecting points that had previously seemed disjointed. Westfield rose, his confidence visibly shaken, but voice firm. "Commander Reeves, these selective disclosures create a misleading impression. The decision to withhold certain intelligence from field operators falls within command discretion during sensitive operations. That discretion doesn't extend to creating conditions that violate rules of engagement," Reeves countered. "The official mission directive ordered termination of all personnel at the target location, while withholding confirmation of civilian presence. The implications hung in the air. What had begun as a hearing about a subordinate's insubordination was transforming into questions about command ethics and potential war crimes. Blackwood attempted to regain control. "Commander Reeves, while this information provides context, it doesn't excuse Lieutenant Commander Thorne's subsequent actions, abandoning her post and operating outside communications protocols. Her communications were monitored and recorded as per standard operating procedure," Reeves replied. "Those records show she attempted to report civilian presence through official channels before taking independent action." "Records conveniently supporting her version of events," Westfield interjected. "Records confirmed authentic by naval intelligence cryptographic verification," Reeves stated flatly. The afternoon brought Captain Thorne back to the stand, his testimony now focused specifically on Operation Sandpiper. "Captain, were you aware of Lieutenant Commander Thorne's concerns about civilian presence at the target location?" Blackwood asked. "I was not her direct commander during that operation," Elias clarified. "However, based on previous experience, Lieutenant Commander Thorne's field assessments were consistently reliable, often more accurate than our official intelligence." "That's not what I asked, Captain. I became aware of her concerns after the operation concluded, sir." "And did you find her actions justified based on those concerns?" Elias met Blackwood's gaze directly. "Had I been her commanding officer, I would have recommended commendation, not censure." The statement caused visible reaction throughout the courtroom. Blackwood's jaw tightened. Westfield conferred urgently with his team. Ellis Zane glanced at Larissa, noticing something others missed, a subtle shift in her posture, not relief, but recognition, as if pieces of a complex puzzle were finally aligning. As the day's testimony continued, the narrative around Operation Sandpiper evolved. What had been portrayed as a straightforward case of insubordination revealed itself as something far more complex. A junior officer caught between mission parameters and ethical imperatives, between official channels and operational reality. Throughout this evolution, Larissa remained composed, answering questions directly, but offering no unnecessary elaboration. Her restraint stood in stark contrast to the increasingly agitated exchanges between Westfield and Reeves, between Blackwood and various witnesses. By late afternoon, Blackwood's frustration had reached visible limits. His questioning of Larissa grew increasingly personal and provocative. "Your entire career seems built on exceptional circumstances and special considerations," he remarked with thinly veiled contempt. "Always the lone operator, always the one with unique insight unavailable to standard channels." "Special operations often require adaptability," Larissa replied evenly. "Or perhaps a certain willingness to disregard inconvenient limitations," Blackwood countered. "Your record suggests someone who believes themselves above standard protocols." "My record reflects mission outcomes, sir. Outcomes that cannot be independently verified in many cases," Blackwood noted sharply. "How convenient that your most impressive achievements occur in operations too classified to examine." The remark hung in the air, a direct challenge to Larissa's integrity and service record. For the first time, something like genuine emotion flickered across her face, quickly controlled, but noticed by those watching closely. Admiral Cahill shifted in his seat, his expression darkening at Blackwood's implication. Commander Reeves exchanged a glance with her superior, silent communication passing between them. As the day's proceedings neared conclusion, Blackwood made an announcement that surprised the gallery. "Tomorrow, this court will hear testimony from Rear Admiral Marcus Vincent, former Task Force Commander for Operation Sandpiper." The statement caused immediate reaction. Vincent had not been on any witness list, his involvement unexpected. Ellis Zane quickly noted that several senior officers appeared equally surprised by the announcement. "Admiral Vincent will provide direct testimony regarding the operational decisions relevant to these proceedings," Blackwood continued, a new confidence in his tone. His perspective should clarify many of the questions raised today. As the court adjourned, Larissa remained seated momentarily, her expression unreadable. When she finally rose to leave, Ellis noticed her exchange a brief glance with Admiral Cahill, something passing between them that transcended words. In the hallway outside, activity had increased substantially. Military police establishing additional security checkpoints, senior officers conferring in hushed tones. What had begun as a disciplinary hearing had clearly escalated to something with broader implications. Ellis approached Larissa as she prepared to leave. Vincent wasn't on any witness list. That's not standard procedure. Very little about these proceedings has followed standard procedure, she replied quietly. You don't seem concerned. Should I be? Ellis studied her. Vincent was the authorizing officer for Operation Sandpiper, wasn't he? If your allegations about suppressed intelligence are true, he bears direct responsibility. Perhaps that's why he's suddenly appearing, Larissa suggested, her tone neutral but her eyes alert. Or perhaps to ensure the official narrative prevails, Ellis countered. Truth has a way of emerging, regardless of narrative. That's surprisingly optimistic for someone facing a stacked tribunal. Larissa offered the faintest smile. I've faced worse odds. That evening, Larissa returned home to find Wren waiting anxiously, the television tuned to local news, where speculation about the hearing had become the lead story. They're talking about you, Wren said, her young face tight with concern. Larissa turned off the television. People talk about many things they don't understand. Are they going to take you away? The question cut through Larissa's carefully maintained composure. She knelt to her daughter's level, taking her hands. No one is taking me away from you. That's a promise. Dad, promise too, Wren whispered, the shadow of earlier loss darkening her eyes. Larissa pulled her close. Different circumstances, different promise. I'm not going anywhere. After Wren had gone to bed, Larissa checked the house perimeter with habitual thoroughness before retrieving a secure phone from another hidden compartment. She dialed a number from memory. It's me, she said when the line connected. Vincent is appearing tomorrow. We know, Cahill's voice replied. Unexpected but not unmanageable. He'll deny everything. Let him try. Authorization came through. Full disclosure has been approved. A beat of silence followed. All of it? Larissa finally asked. Everything relevant to Sandpiper. That opens doors better left closed, Ray. Some doors need opening, especially when they're hiding the wrong things. After ending the call, Larissa stood at her kitchen window, looking out into the darkness beyond. The night was clear, stars visible above the naval base, the familiar rhythm of military life continuing despite the personal storm surrounding her. Her phone vibrated with another message. Phoenix Phase 2. Complete. Prepare for disclosure. She deleted it immediately, moving to her daughter's room to check on her once more before attempting sleep herself. Morning brought heightened security around the JAG headquarters. News vans had gathered outside, suggesting the proceedings had attracted wider attention. Uniformed personnel monitored access points with increased vigilance. Inside, the courtroom had been reconfigured. Additional seating accommodated several flag officers who had not previously attended. A separate security team had swept the room before allowing entry. The atmosphere had transformed from disciplinary proceeding to something approaching a classified briefing. As Larissa took her place, she noticed Ellis Zane being thoroughly vetted before admission, his credentials examined with unusual care. Admiral Cahill entered with Commander Reeves, both now in full-dress uniform rather than the service dress they had worn previously. Blackwood called the session to order, his demeanor suggesting renewed confidence. This court calls Rear Admiral Marcus Vincent. Vincent entered with military precision, his chest adorned with combat decorations, his bearing projecting absolute authority. At 58, he carried the weathered look of a career officer who had seen direct action before ascending to command. After being sworn in, Vincent took the stand, acknowledging Blackwood with professional courtesy while pointedly avoiding looking at Larissa. Admiral Vincent, you were task force commander overseeing Operation Sandpiper, correct? Blackwood began. That is correct, Your Honor. Can you describe the operational parameters as communicated to Lieutenant Commander Thorne and her team? Vincent's testimony was measured and authoritative, presenting the operation as a standard intelligence-driven strike against confirmed, hostile forces. His account directly contradicted the documentation Reeves had presented, stating unequivocally that no credible intelligence regarding civilian presence had been received prior to the operation. Lieutenant Commander Thorne abandoned her assigned post without authorization, Vincent stated firmly. Her actions created a critical vulnerability in our security perimeter and nearly compromised the entire operation. Westfield guided Vincent through a detailed timeline that supported the prosecution's narrative, each point delivered with the conviction of someone accustomed to having their word accepted without question. When cross-examination began, Larissa remained seated, studying Vincent with calm assessment. Admiral Vincent, were you personally present in the command center during Operation Sandpiper? I monitored the operation from Task Force headquarters, as appropriate for my position. So, you were not directly observing real-time intelligence feeds? I received regular updates from operations staff, including intelligence from regional assets regarding civilian presence. Vincent's jaw tightened slightly. No credible intelligence regarding civilian presence was received. Larissa nodded, as if his answer confirmed something. Request permission to introduce evidence, Your Honor. Blackwood hesitated. What evidence? Communications records from Operation Sandpiper, specifically transmissions between regional assets and command center, time-stamped 3 hours before the operation commenced. Westfield rose immediately. Objection, Your Honor. Any such records would be classified beyond the scope of these proceedings. Before Blackwood could respond, Commander Reeves approached the bench. Your Honor, I have been authorized to confirm that these records have been declassified specifically for this hearing. A tense silence followed. Vincent exchanged a glance with Blackwood, something unspoken passing between them. The court will review these records, Blackwood finally stated, his voice tight. The courtroom screens displayed communications logs, showing multiple intelligence reports regarding civilian presence at the target location, all received and acknowledged by Command Center, all time-stamped well before the operation commenced. Vincent's composure faltered briefly. These records are incomplete or altered. Command received no such intelligence. The cryptographic signatures confirm authenticity, Reeves stated, her tone professional but firm. These communications were logged, verified, and acknowledged by Task Force headquarters. If such communications occurred, they were not brought to my attention, Vincent insisted, his voice hardening. Admiral Vincent, Larissa continued, were you briefed on the Omega Protocol regarding civilian presence verification? The question caused visible reaction. Vincent stiffened, his eyes narrowing. That protocol is not relevant to these proceedings. The Omega Protocol specifically requires task force commanders to personally review all intelligence regarding potential civilian casualties before authorizing strike operations, Larissa stated for the record. Did you review such intelligence before authorizing Operation Sandpiper? Objection, Westfield interjected. This line of questioning attempts to shift focus from the defendant's actions to command decisions beyond the scope of this hearing. On the contrary, Larissa countered calmly, it establishes whether Operation Sandpiper was conducted in accordance with established protocols, directly relevant to the charges against me. Blackwood appeared torn, clearly recognizing the dangerous territory the questioning had entered. The objection is overruled. Admiral Vincent will answer the question. Vincent's expression hardened further. I followed all relevant protocols for the operation. That doesn't answer whether you personally reviewed intelligence regarding civilian presence, as required by Omega Protocol, Larissa pressed. I reviewed all credible intelligence presented to me, Vincent stated flatly. But not the intelligence from regional assets that was logged and acknowledged by your command center? The exchange continued, tension building with each question and answer. Vincent maintained his position that no credible intelligence regarding civilians had reached his level, despite the communication logs showing otherwise. As the morning progressed, a pattern emerged. Vincent's testimony increasingly suggested a command structure that had filtered intelligence before it reached him, creating plausible deniability while enabling operational decisions that might otherwise violate established protocols. During the lunch recess, Ellis approached Captain Thorne again. Vincent's throwing his own staff under the bus, he observed quietly. Standard procedure when accountability comes knocking, Elias replied with veiled disgust. Create enough layers that responsibility becomes impossible to assign. Except Thorne has the receipts. Elias smiled tightly. She usually does. When court reconvened, Admiral Cahill was called to the stand, his presence bringing a perceptible shift in the courtroom dynamics. As former director of Naval Special Warfare Command, his authority on operational matters carried exceptional weight. Admiral Cahill, you've reviewed the operational records of Sandpiper? Blackwood asked. I have, Your Honor, both in my former capacity and in preparation for these proceedings. "And your assessment of Lieutenant Commander Thorne's actions?" Cahill's response was measured but unequivocal. Lieutenant Commander Thorne acted in accordance with rules of engagement and operational ethics when faced with intelligence regarding civilian presence. Her decision to verify that intelligence personally, when command appeared to disregard it, demonstrated both moral courage and tactical judgment. Westfield attempted to undermine this assessment through aggressive questioning, suggesting Cahill's judgment was colored by previous professional association with Larissa. Cahill remained unruffled, his responses carrying the weight of decades of operational experience. "Commander Westfield, I've commanded operations in 3 combat theaters and overseen thousands of special operations missions. My assessment is based on operational reality, not personal association." As the afternoon session continued, Commander Reeves presented additional documentation showing a pattern of similar intelligence filtering during other operations, creating a context that supported Larissa's account of Sandpiper. Throughout these revelations, Larissa maintained her composed demeanor, asking pointed questions when appropriate, but otherwise allowing the evidence to speak for itself. Her restraint stood in increasing contrast to Vincent's growing defensiveness and Blackwood's visible discomfort. As the day neared conclusion, Blackwood appeared to recognize the shifting momentum. His questioning became less hostile, more focused on establishing facts than supporting predetermined conclusions. Vincent's testimony, initially presented as definitive, had been seriously undermined by documentary evidence. In the final hour, Blackwood made an unexpected announcement. "This court will recess until tomorrow morning, when Lieutenant Commander Thorne will complete her testimony. All parties should be prepared for concluding statements following that testimony." As the courtroom emptied, Ellis observed the various reactions, from Vincent's tight-lipped exit to Cahill's quiet conference with Reeves. Larissa gathered her notes methodically, her expression revealing nothing of her thoughts. When Ellis approached, she looked up with calm assessment. "The tide's turning," he noted quietly. "Tides are predictable," she replied. "People less so." Vincent looked rattled by the end. Men like Vincent aren't accustomed to having their word questioned. Ellis studied her. "You knew this would happen, didn't you? The evidence, the communications logs, it was all part of some larger strategy." Larissa met his gaze directly. "Sometimes the truth needs strategic deployment to be heard." That night, in a secure facility across the base, Admiral Cahill met again with Commander Reeves, their discussion focused on the next day's proceedings. "Blackwood's backing away from his position," Reeves observed, reviewing notes from the day. Vincent's testimony hurt their case more than helped. "Vincent made the classic mistake," Cahill replied. "He assumed operational records wouldn't contradict his account, or that they'd remain classified enough to make contradiction impossible." Cahill nodded, his expression growing serious. "Tomorrow changes everything. Are we certain this is the right course?" "The authorization came directly from the Secretary," Reeves confirmed. "Full disclosure has been approved." "Not just about Sandpiper," Cahill clarified. "About Night Fox." The name hung in the air between them, carrying weight beyond the simple words. "Once that identity is confirmed publicly, there's no going back," Cahill continued. "Years of operational security, dozens of missions, all exposed to scrutiny." "Perhaps that scrutiny is overdue," Reeves suggested, "especially if it prevents more Sandpipers." Cahill considered this, then nodded slowly. "Send the final authorization. Prepare the files for tomorrow's session." In her home, Larissa sat at her kitchen table, the house quiet around her. Wren had finally fallen asleep after asking questions Larissa couldn't fully answer, her daughter's intuitive understanding of stakes beyond her years, both touching and concerning. Her phone received one final message for the night. "Authorization complete. Phoenix conclusion tomorrow." She closed her eyes briefly, years of operations, decisions, and consequences flashing behind her eyelids. Tomorrow would change everything, not just for her career, but for her life with Wren, for the quiet existence she had built after leaving active service. She moved to the window, looking out at the night. A fox slipped from the shadows at the edge of her yard, pausing to look directly toward her house before disappearing into the darkness. The sight brought the faintest smile to her lips, nature's reminder of adaptation and survival. Morning arrived with heightened anticipation. The courthouse perimeter had been expanded, additional security screening everyone who entered. Media presence had grown substantially, word having spread about revelations during previous sessions. Inside, the courtroom had filled beyond capacity. Senior officers occupied reserved seating, representatives from various military branches present for proceedings that had clearly transcended a simple disciplinary matter. Larissa arrived early, moving through security with practiced ease despite the additional measures. She wore the same simple dark blue suit, her appearance deliberately understated, her demeanor calm despite the tension surrounding her. As she took her place, she noticed additional technical personnel at the courtroom systems, suggesting preparations for more extensive evidence presentation. Commander Reeves conferred with them briefly before taking her seat near Admiral Cahill. Ellis Zane entered, noting the changed atmosphere immediately. The press section had expanded, though access remained tightly controlled. The gallery's mood had shifted from earlier sessions, the previous undertone of judgment replaced by anticipation. When Blackwood entered, his expression suggested a man coming to terms with changed circumstances. Westfield followed, conferring urgently with his team, their previous confidence notably diminished. "This court is now in session," Blackwood announced, his voice carrying renewed formality. "Lieutenant Commander Thorne will continue her testimony." As Larissa took the stand, the courtroom fell silent, collective focus intensifying on the woman whose quiet composure had remained constant throughout proceedings that had grown increasingly extraordinary. Blackwood adjusted his glasses, reviewing notes before looking directly at Larissa. His tone had lost its earlier contempt, replaced by something approaching professional neutrality. "Lieutenant Commander Thorne, your service record contains numerous commendations alongside the reprimands we've discussed. Those commendations often reference exceptional performance under difficult circumstances, yet provide minimal specific detail." He paused, seeming to choose his next words with unusual care. "Perhaps you could tell the court what your call sign was during your operational deployments. That might provide context for your approach to military protocols." The question hung in the air, appearing innocuous but carrying weight that only those with specific knowledge could recognize. The gallery watched with mild interest, expecting some standard military designation. Larissa looked directly at Blackwood, her voice steady, almost quiet. "Night Fox, sir." The two words fell like stones into still water, ripples of reaction spreading outward. A Marine guard near the door dropped his clipboard with a clatter that echoed in the sudden silence. Admiral Cahill stood. Westfield's confident expression collapsed. Throughout the gallery, recognition dawned on various faces, understanding spreading like a revelation. Blackwood himself appeared stunned, his voice faltering. "I don't believe you. Have you ever witnessed a moment when someone's true identity or achievements were finally recognized? A teacher, a veteran, a quiet professional whose impact was far greater than anyone realized. Share your story of hidden heroes in the comments below. Sometimes the most extraordinary people walk among us unnoticed, their greatest contributions known only to a few. Let's honor them together. Commander Reeves stepped forward immediately, her movements precise and deliberate. Admiral, I'm instructed to present this evidence. She signaled to a technician who activated the courtroom screens. The displays illuminated with classified files, mission details previously denied existing. Operation code names appeared with success metrics that seemed impossible. Hostage extractions with 0 casualties, high-value target neutralizations in supposedly impenetrable locations, intelligence gathering in areas deemed too hostile for Western operatives. The gallery watched in stunned silence as decades of classified operations materialized before them, each connected by a single operational signature: Night Fox. Admiral Cahill approached the bench, his bearing formal but his voice carrying undeniable authority. As former Director of Naval Special Warfare Command, I confirm Lieutenant Commander Thorne's identity as the operative codenamed Night Fox. Blackwood struggled to process this revelation, his previous confidence shattered. Why wasn't I informed of this before these proceedings began? Because Night Fox's existence was classified above your clearance level, Cahill stated flatly. Until now. Commander Reeves continued her presentation. This information has been declassified by direct order of the Secretary of the Navy as of 600 this morning. The screens displayed operational photographs from various deployments, always with the same shadowy figure at the periphery. face deliberately obscured, but presence unmistakable. Mission statistics scrolled alongside, painting a picture of extraordinary achievement spanning years of service. Throughout the gallery, reactions varied from shock to dawning comprehension. Junior officers whispered among themselves, connecting rumors they had dismissed as military mythology with the composed woman at the witness stand. Senior commanders exchanged knowing glances, pieces of previously compartmentalized information suddenly forming a coherent whole. Ellis Zane stared at mission details from Fallujah, 2007. The same operation his brother had described. The extraction of 7 Marines trapped behind enemy lines by a single operator who moved like a fox through enemy territory. His eyes met Larissa's across the courtroom, silent recognition passing between them. These operations confirm Lieutenant Commander Thorne executed 23 high-risk extractions, resulting in the rescue of 117 American and Allied personnel, Reeves continued. She neutralized 11 high-value targets previously deemed unreachable. The operations Admiral Blackwood claimed didn't exist, saved hundreds of lives. Westfield rose, his composure visibly shaken, but professional training asserting itself. Your Honor, while these operational details are certainly impressive, they don't excuse the specific violations cited in these proceedings. On the contrary, Cahill countered, they provide essential context for Lieutenant Commander Thorne's actions during Operation Sandpiper. The screens shifted to display the complete Sandpiper briefing, communication logs, and after-action reports, now with minimal redactions. The documentation revealed Larissa hadn't disobeyed orders, but had refused to execute a directive that would have resulted in civilian casualties to cover up intelligence failures. The full record clearly shows Lieutenant Commander Thorne attempted to report civilian presence through standard channels, Reeves stated. When those reports were suppressed at command level, she took appropriate action to verify intelligence and prevent violation of rules of engagement. More damning evidence appeared. Communications between Blackwood and senior officials, including Admiral Vincent, conspiring to force Larissa to take the fall for their failed operation. The messages explicitly discussed using the disciplinary hearing to discredit her before she could reveal what she knew about suppressed intelligence. Blackwood's face drained of color as his own words appeared on the courtroom screens. Vincent, still seated in the gallery, rose abruptly as if to leave, only to find his path blocked by naval intelligence personnel who had materialized at the doors. These records confirm a deliberate attempt to use these proceedings to silence Lieutenant Commander Thorne, Cahill stated, addressing the entire courtroom rather than just the bench, to punish her for refusing an order that would have violated both military law and basic human decency. The Secretary of the Navy's representative, a distinguished civilian who had entered during the evidence presentation, approached the bench. Admiral Blackwood, I am authorized to inform you that all charges against Lieutenant Commander Thorne are hereby dismissed. Furthermore, you are relieved of duty pending investigation into your involvement in Operation Sandpiper and subsequent attempts to mislead this tribunal. Stunned silence fell across the courtroom. Blackwood seemed to physically diminish in his chair. The authority he had wielded with such confidence suddenly stripped away. As Larissa stood to leave the witness stand, a Marine sergeant near the door came to attention, rendering a sharp, precise salute. The gesture spread through the uniformed personnel present. A spontaneous wave of respect, not ordered or required, but freely given. Westfield gathered his materials in silence, avoiding eye contact with everyone. His career aspirations, so clearly aligned with the prosecutorial role he had embraced, now lay in ruins alongside the case he had built. Vincent was escorted from the courtroom by naval intelligence officers, his protests muted by the weight of evidence against him. The carefully constructed hierarchy that had protected him from accountability crumbled in the face of documented truth. Through it all, Larissa maintained her composure, acknowledging the salutes with a simple nod, but offering no triumphant display. Her vindication carried none of the theatrical satisfaction viewers expect from courtroom dramas, just the quiet dignity that had characterized her throughout. Outside the courthouse, media representatives clamored for statements as military police established a perimeter. The story had exploded beyond the confines of the naval base, the revelation of Night Fox's existence after years of denial, triggering intense public interest. Ellis approached Larissa as she navigated through the chaos, keeping pace beside her. The world should know what happened in there, he said, professional instinct wrestling with personal respect. "Some stories aren't meant to be headlines," Larissa replied simply. "Then what was this all about? Why go through this hearing if not to clear your name?" Larissa paused, looking toward the school where a bus was arriving, Wren visible among the children disembarking. "It wasn't about clearing my name. It was about stopping them from using other operators as scapegoats." Admiral Cahill joined them, having navigated his own path through the media gauntlet. "The president has authorized me to offer you reinstatement, Larissa. Full rank, your choice of assignment." Larissa watched her daughter approach, her expression softening in a way it hadn't throughout the proceedings. "With respect, Admiral, I've already chosen my mission." Cahill followed her gaze, understanding registering in his eyes. "Some missions matter more than others," he acknowledged quietly. As Wren reached them, Larissa introduced her to Cahill with simple terms that excluded their professional history. To Wren, he was simply her mother's friend, not the man who had authorized countless classified operations. "Is it over?" Wren asked directly, her perception cutting through adult obfuscation. "It's over," Larissa confirmed. "Everything's fine now." Wren studied her mother's face with the intensity unique to children. Did they finally understand? The question carried more weight than its simple words suggested. Larissa considered her response carefully. "I think they did, yes." As they walked home, Ellis fell into step beside them, maintaining a respectful distance but clearly intent on continuing their conversation. "Your daughter asks good questions," he observed. "She always has," Larissa replied, "even when they're difficult to answer." "I have a few of those myself," Ellis admitted. "Not for publication, just for understanding." Larissa glanced at him. "Ask them later," she suggested, nodding toward Wren, who walked slightly ahead. That evening, after helping Wren with her science project, a diorama of nocturnal animals in their natural habitat, with a fox as its centerpiece, Larissa heard a knock at her door. Opening it revealed Ellis standing on her porch, expression suggesting he had spent the intervening hours processing the day's revelations. "I called in a few favors," he said without preamble. "Found some people who wanted to thank you personally." He stepped aside, revealing several veterans waiting behind him, men and women whose lives Night Fox had saved, including his brother. They hadn't come seeking stories or explanations, merely to express gratitude, person to person, without cameras or ceremonies. The moment stretched into an hour as Larissa spoke quietly with each visitor, memories exchanged in hushed tones on her porch, away from Wren's ears. No dramatic revelations or emotional breakdowns, just the quiet acknowledgement of shared experiences that had shaped all their lives. As the visitors departed, Ellis lingered. "How does it feel?" he asked. "Going from legend back to ordinary life?" Larissa watched the veterans leave, then turned to where Wren continued working on her project in the living room. "Who says this isn't extraordinary?" The question wasn't rhetorical, but genuinely reflective, inviting Ellis to reconsider his definition of significance. He nodded slowly. "My brother never knew who pulled them out, that night in Fallujah. Just that someone had come when everyone else said it was impossible. Sometimes not knowing helps maintain hope," Larissa suggested. "The idea that help can arrive from unexpected places carries people through their darkest moments. Is that why you kept your identity classified for so long? To be a symbol rather than a person?" "I kept it classified because operational security required it," Larissa corrected gently. "The mythology was Command's creation, not mine." Ellis considered this. "But you never corrected it, even when you could have. What purpose would that have served? Missions succeeded because of preparation, training, and sometimes luck, not because of exceptional individuals. The evidence presented today suggests otherwise." Larissa shook her head slightly. "The evidence shows mission outcomes. Behind each of those outcomes were dozens of people providing intelligence, logistics, and support. Night Fox may have executed the final phase, but was never operating alone, despite what the mythology suggests." This perspective, humble yet factual, seemed to surprise Ellis. In a world that craved heroic narratives and exceptional individuals, Larissa's insistence on team achievement and distributed credit ran counter to expected patterns. "Will you tell Wren," he asked, glancing toward the living room, "about Night Fox?" "Someday," Larissa replied, "when understanding it won't burden her with expectations or fears." As Ellis prepared to leave, he offered his hand. Thank you for trusting me with this, even if I can't report it. Who says you can't report it? Larissa asked, surprising him. The operations have been declassified. The story exists now, whether I want it to or not. But you just said some stories aren't meant to be headlines. Some aspects of stories, Larissa clarified. Report what happened in that courtroom. The truth about Sandpiper needs telling. Just remember that behind operational code names are real people with real families. Ellis nodded, understanding the nuance of her request. I'll focus on the systemic issues, the command failures, not the personal mythology. That would be appropriate, Larissa agreed. After he left, Larissa joined Wren in the living room, examining the nearly completed diorama. The fox figurine stood alert in carefully constructed undergrowth, protecting its den while surveying the surroundings. It looks perfect, Larissa said, admiring her daughter's work. I made the fox's eyes reflect light, Wren explained, demonstrating with a small flashlight. The tiny glass beads used for eyes caught the beam, creating a realistic nighttime effect. Just like real foxes. Very authentic, Larissa agreed, smiling at her daughter's attention to detail. You've done excellent research. Ms. Petrovich says good science starts with good observation, Wren replied, referring to her teacher. You have to really see what's there, not just what you expect to see. That's true in many areas of life, Larissa noted. Seeing reality clearly is a valuable skill. They worked together to add final touches to the project, their conversation flowing naturally between school topics and everyday concerns, no mention of courtrooms or military proceedings interrupting their normal routine. Later that night, after Wren had gone to bed, Larissa sat on her back porch, the darkness comfortable around her. The day's events replayed in her mind, not with the adrenaline of combat or the tension of courtroom revelation, but with quiet assessment, analyzing outcomes against objectives as she had done throughout her career. The Phoenix Protocol had succeeded, perhaps better than anticipated. The systemic issues that had allowed Sandpiper to happen had been exposed. Those responsible would face consequences, though likely not proportional to their actions. Most importantly, the precedent had been established that following illegal orders was not an obligation, even for special operators accustomed to classified directives. Her phone vibrated with a text from Cahill. Cleanup proceeding, Vincent in custody, Blackwood under investigation. You sure about declining reinstatement? She typed a simple reply. Positive. Current mission priority, unchanged. His response came quickly. Understood. Standing offer remains. World still needs good operators. Larissa smiled slightly at the familiar recruitment language. World needs good people in all roles, she countered. Some battlefields aren't geographic. The conversation ended there, both understanding that her decision was final and respecting the reasons behind it. The following morning brought change to Naval Station Norfolk. News of the hearing's outcome had spread throughout the military community, altering perceptions and relationships in subtle ways. As Larissa walked Wren to school, she noticed the difference in how people regarded her. Respect replacing suspicion, acknowledgement replacing avoidance. People are looking at you differently today, Wren observed, missing nothing despite her youth. People's perceptions change when they get new information, Larissa explained simply. Like when they found out you weren't in trouble but actually did something good? Something like that, Larissa acknowledged, impressed by her daughter's intuitive understanding. At the school entrance, Wren's teacher greeted them with new warmth, clearly having heard some version of yesterday's events. Lieutenant Commander Thorne, it's an honor to have your daughter in my class. Larissa accepted the comment with gracious simplicity. The honor is mine, Ms. Petrovich. Your science curriculum has inspired Wren's excellent project. The exchange was brief but significant, establishing a new baseline of interaction that acknowledged changed circumstances without dwelling on them. As Larissa turned to leave, Wren caught her hand. Mom, can I tell Alicia and Marcus about you being Night Fox? They won't, believe it unless I say it's true. The question stopped Larissa mid-stride. She knelt to her daughter's level, searching her eyes. How did you know that name? I heard you and the Admiral talking last night, Wren admitted, and I saw the news this morning when you were in the shower. Larissa processed this information quickly, adjusting to the reality that her daughter knew more than she had realized. That name belongs to a part of my life that's mostly over now, she explained gently. It's not something to share with friends, especially since much of it remains classified. But everyone's talking about it, Ren persisted. It's already on the internet. People talk about many things they don't fully understand, Larissa said, echoing her words from earlier conversations. What matters is what's true, not what's said. And the truth is, I'm your mom first, everything else second. Ren considered this, her young face serious. So, it's like a secret identity? Despite herself, Larissa smiled. Not exactly. More like a job description that's no longer relevant. But you did save people, right? Like a hero? The word made Larissa uncomfortable, its simplistic associations at odds with operational reality. I did my job, which sometimes involved helping people in dangerous situations. But I was never alone. I always had a team supporting me, even when they weren't physically present. This nuanced explanation seemed to satisfy Ren, who nodded thoughtfully before heading into the school building. As Larissa walked back home, Admiral Cahill fell into step beside her, having apparently waited nearby. Tough questions from the junior interrogator? He asked, nodding toward the school. She knows more than I expected, Larissa admitted. News travels fast. Especially news people want to believe, Cahill noted. The Night Fox mythology serves a purpose for the service. Hope embodied, the idea that no one gets left behind, no matter how impossible the extraction seems. Mythology shouldn't overshadow reality, Larissa countered. The real work was always collaborative, dependent on intelligence, support, and preparation. The lone operator narrative distorts operational truth. Cahill smiled slightly. Always the analyst, even about your own legend. Especially about that, Larissa corrected. Accurate assessment matters most when personal perspective clouds judgment. They walked in companionable silence for a moment before Cahill spoke again. The secretary asked me to convey his personal appreciation for your service, particularly regarding Sandpiper. Your actions prevented what could have been a significant humanitarian violation and subsequent intelligence disaster. Larissa nodded acknowledgement, but offered no response. The validation neither needed nor sought. Vincent's facing serious charges, Cahill continued. Blackwood too, though likely with less severe consequences. The system is correcting itself, at least in this instance. Until the next time operational expediency trumps ethical considerations, Larissa observed, the systemic issues remain, regardless of individual accountability in this case. Perhaps, Cahill conceded, but exposure creates opportunity for reform. Your testimony shifted perspectives at command level, opened conversations previously avoided. They reached Larissa's home, pausing at the front walk. Will you be all right with the attention? Cahill asked, genuine concern in his voice. The Night Fox revelation will attract interest beyond military circles. Interest fades when fed limited information, Larissa replied pragmatically. I'll decline interviews, avoid public appearances, focus on Ren. In 6 months, some new story will capture public imagination. Cahill seemed skeptical, but didn't argue. If you need anything, operational or personal, you know how to reach me. I do, Larissa confirmed. Thank you, Ray. The day proceeded with unexpected normalcy, the anticipated media onslaught managed by Naval Public Affairs, which issued a brief statement acknowledging Lieutenant Commander Thorne's service while emphasizing the classified nature of specific operations. Journalists requesting interviews received polite but firm refusals. By afternoon, Larissa had resumed her regular routine, reviewing job applications for civilian security consulting positions she had applied for before the hearing began. Her phone occasionally buzzed with messages from former colleagues who had seen the news, most offering simple acknowledgement rather than seeking details they knew she wouldn't provide. When she picked Ren up from school, the diorama earned an A+ and enthusiastic praise from Ms. Petrovich, particularly for the realistic nocturnal adaptations depicted in the Fox figure. Ren beamed with pride, her earlier questions about Night Fox apparently set aside in favor of academic achievement. That evening, as they prepared dinner together, Ren returned to the morning's conversation from an unexpected angle. If you were Night Fox, and Night Fox helped people who were trapped, does that mean you understand what it feels like to be trapped? The question's perceptiveness caught Larissa by surprise. Everyone feels trapped sometimes, she answered carefully. By circumstances, by expectations, by fear. Even you, Ren pressed. Larissa considered her response, recognizing the importance of honesty while maintaining appropriate boundaries. Even me. Being afraid is universal. Courage isn't about not feeling fear. It's about feeling it and doing what's right anyway. Is that what you did when you were Night Fox? That's what I tried to do, Larissa confirmed, and what I still try to do, every day, in different ways. Ren absorbed this, continuing to chop vegetables with careful concentration. Dad used to say you were the strongest person he ever knew. I didn't understand what he meant then. The mention of her late husband brought a familiar ache, subdued by time but never absent. Your father had his own kind of strength, different from mine, but no less important. He couldn't do what you did though, could he? The Night Fox things? He did other things that mattered, Larissa said gently. Strength takes many forms, Ren. Physical ability is just one kind. Moral courage, emotional resilience, intellectual honesty. These are equally important. This perspective seemed to resonate with Ren, who nodded thoughtfully. So, I could be strong like you, but in my own way? You already are, Larissa assured her. I see your strength every day, in how you face challenges, how you keep going after setbacks, how you stand up for what's right even when it's difficult. The conversation shifted to school matters as they finished preparing dinner, but Larissa recognized the significance of the exchange. Ren was processing the revelations about her mother through the lens of her own developing identity, seeking connection and understanding rather than simply being impressed by the mythology. Later that night, after Ren had gone to bed, Larissa received an unexpected visitor. Ellis Zane stood on her porch, holding a newspaper with the headline, Night Fox Revealed. Hero operator vindicated in naval hearing. I had nothing to do with this, he said immediately. My piece focuses entirely on the command failures and attempted cover-up of Sandpiper. This came from someone else with less nuanced understanding of the situation. Larissa accepted the paper, skimming the article with professional detachment. It was inevitable. The story has too many dramatic elements to ignore. I'm sorry anyway, Ellis offered. I know this kind of attention isn't what you wanted. Wanting and expecting are different things, Larissa replied, setting the paper aside. I anticipated this reaction. It will run its course. Ellis seemed surprised by her equanimity. You're not concerned about how this affects your future, your privacy? I'm concerned about appropriate operational security and protecting ongoing missions that might be compromised by excessive detail. My personal discomfort with attention is irrelevant compared to those considerations. This perspective, prioritizing mission over ego, even in civilian life, seemed to further Ellis's understanding of the woman behind the mythology. You really meant what you said earlier, about Night Fox being a team achievement rather than individual heroism. Reality rarely conforms to narratives people find satisfying, Larissa noted. The lone operator making impossible rescues makes for better headlines than the reality of multi-layered support structures and collaborative intelligence. Ellis nodded slowly. I tried to convey that in my piece, how systemic failures created the conditions for Sandpiper, and how systemic corrections might prevent similar situations in future. I appreciate that approach, Larissa acknowledged. It's more valuable than personalized. Mythology. Their conversation continued briefly, Ellis sharing his brother's additional recollections of the Fallujah extraction now that the operation had been partially declassified. His description matched operational reality more closely than most accounts, his journalist's attention to detail evident even in second-hand information. After Ellis departed, Larissa completed her evening security check, a habit maintained from operational days. The house secure, she moved to Ren's room, watching her daughter sleep peacefully, untroubled by the complexities suddenly surrounding them. In the quiet darkness, Larissa reflected on the journey that had brought her here, from classified operations to military courtroom to this moment of domestic tranquility. The transition hadn't been linear or simple, had included loss and adjustment alongside growth and new purpose. The Night Fox identity had never been separate from her core self, merely a professional application of inherent qualities, precision, adaptability, calculated risk assessment, commitment to mission objectives. Those same qualities now served different purposes, directed toward raising her daughter, building a stable home, contributing to her community in less dramatic but equally meaningful ways. Morning brought a symbolic conclusion to the military proceedings, A formal letter arrived confirming all charges dismissed, her service record amended to remove references to the disciplinary hearing. Accompanying it was a private note from the Secretary of the Navy, expressing personal appreciation and acknowledgement of service beyond what public recognition could address. As Larissa prepared to walk Wren to school, she noticed a small package on her front porch, unmarked except for her name. Inside was a simple silver pin in the shape of a fox, accompanied by a card signed by the 7 Marines from the Fallujah extraction, including Ellis's brother. No grand statement, no effusive gratitude, just a simple acknowledgement. Some debts can't be repaid, only honored. Thank you. She slipped the pin into her pocket rather than wearing it. Its significance personal rather than performative. As Wren joined her, backpack ready for the day ahead, Larissa felt a sense of completion that transcended the courtroom vindication. "Ready for your presentation today?" she asked, referring to Wren's scheduled explanation of her diorama to the class. "Ready?" Wren confirmed with confidence. "I know everything about foxes now." "Everything?" Larissa teased gently. Wren considered this with characteristic thoughtfulness. "Maybe not everything, but enough to explain why they're important." As they walked toward the school, the morning sun caught Wren's fox pendant, sending brief flashes of light across her face. The silver reflection reminded Larissa of night vision flares, moments of illumination in darkness, guidance points during complex extractions. "Mom?" Wren's voice pulled her from memory. "Are you okay?" "I'm good," Larissa assured her, smiling genuinely. "Just thinking about how some skills transfer across different parts of life." "Like being observant?" Wren suggested. "That would help both foxes and people who need to pay attention to details." "Exactly like that," Larissa agreed, impressed once again by her daughter's intuitive connections. They continued toward the school, their conversation shifting to everyday topics, the extraordinary revelations of recent days settling into background context, rather than dominating foreground attention. This natural integration of past and present, professional identity and personal role, represented the true resolution Larissa had sought throughout the hearing. Not vindication or recognition, not even justice for specific operational decisions, but the freedom to move forward with integrity intact, to build a life where Night Fox existed as foundation rather than facade, where lessons learned through classified operations could inform everyday challenges and opportunities. As they reached the school, Wren hugged her with characteristic fierceness before joining her friends. Larissa watched her go, seeing in her daughter's confident stride and open expression the most meaningful outcome of all her operations, all her decisions, all her sacrifices. The truest heroism wasn't found in combat zones or courtrooms, but in the daily commitment to values that transcended circumstance, in choices that honored both personal integrity and broader responsibility. Night Fox hadn't disappeared. She had simply found a different way to stand guard, protecting not hostages in foreign territories, but potential in its most precious form, the future represented by a child's promise. Larissa turned toward home, ready for whatever challenges the day might bring, her steps measured and purposeful. A guardian moving through daylight, with the same quiet confidence that had once defined her movements through darkness. Do you know someone whose true impact goes unrecognized? Someone who serves others without seeking acclaim? Whose greatest contributions happen behind the scenes? Share their story in the comments. The world needs to celebrate those quiet heroes who transform lives without fanfare, whose legacy lives in the people they've helped, rather than in headlines or awards. Their examples remind us that true significance often lies in what we do when no one is watching.